Elias Carter had always known that humanity wasn't taken seriously in the galaxy. When he first joined the intergalactic archaeological mission on the planet Sci-Fi 9, he knew he'd be an outsider, but nothing could have prepared him for how much the alien scholars would laugh at him. Sci-Fi 9 was a jungle planet, dense, wild, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Ancient ruins, untouched for millennia, littered the landscape. The alien researchers, from species like the sleek and tall Vrixians to the floating ethereal Lumai, were focused on cataloging every stone and artifact. They were experts, historians, scholars, and scientists. To them, humans were little more than curiosities. Human technology, how quaint, one of the Vrixians said, his voice filled with amusement. He adjusted his silver robes, looking down at Elias as if he were something from a history book. Elias smiled, but it wasn't because he found the comment funny. It was because he knew they had no idea what they were missing. Humanity had been around for centuries, surviving wars, disasters, and countless challenges. They'd learned how to adapt, how to fight, and how to thrive. But no one ever gave humans credit for it. As the group explored the primary ruins, Elias felt a strange pull in the air, like an invisible thread guiding him deeper into the jungle. The alien scholars were busy cataloging the usual, examining ancient stone carvings and faded murals. But Elias couldn't help but feel there was more, something important that everyone else was overlooking. The jungle was thick, almost suffocating with its overgrown vines and towering trees. He stood at the edge of the main excavation site, watching the others with disinterest. He had already seen this before. Alien ruins were often the same. Simple, decorated with intricate carvings, but lacking any real meaning. Elias wasn't searching for ancient pottery or statues. He was looking for something bigger. "Are you going to just stand there, Carter?" A Lumai scholar floated up to him, her transparent wings shimmering in the sunlight. "The others are already making progress." Elias nodded but didn't answer right away. He was lost in thought, staring at a distant hill. His gut told him there was something out there, something buried beneath the jungle just waiting to be discovered. The others didn't seem to share his conviction, dismissing his theories as nothing more than a human's overactive imagination. But Elias wasn't going to let their laughter stop him. He had learned a long time ago that if he wanted to make a real discovery, he would have to go beyond what others saw. He would have to trust his instincts. Without another word, he turned and began walking toward the dense thicket, his boots crunching the leaves beneath him. He could hear the murmurs of the alien researchers behind him, but he didn't care. They'd follow the obvious paths. He would find something they couldn't. Hours passed, and the jungle grew thicker as Elias pushed forward. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and the sounds of unseen creatures. He didn't mind the isolation. He had always preferred working alone. It gave him the freedom to think and follow the small, unspoken clues that others missed. The ground beneath him seemed to shift slightly, and as he cleared a patch of dense foliage, he stopped in his tracks. There, half hidden by vines and centuries of dirt, was something extraordinary. At first, Elias thought it was just another large stone formation, but as he cleared away more of the overgrowth, his heart began to race. It wasn't a stone at all. It was metal. A large, curved shape buried deep beneath the earth, with strange markings etched into its surface. A ship. His fingers trembled with excitement as he brushed aside more vines, revealing a section of the hull. The markings were unlike anything he had seen before. These were not alien designs. No, this was something much older, something forgotten. A warship. He stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing with possibilities. This was no ordinary discovery. This was a relic from another time, something far beyond what the alien researchers had even dreamed of finding on Typhos 9. Elias knew, deep in his bones, that he had stumbled upon something monumental, something that could change everything. But as he continued to inspect the ship, a wave of doubt swept over him. Would they believe him? Or would they laugh again, dismissing his find as another human fantasy? He knew the alien scholars would be skeptical, but Elias had never cared much for their opinions. He had found something that mattered, and now he would make them see it. Elias stood in awe, staring at the massive warship half buried in the jungle. The vines twisted around the ship like nature itself was trying to keep it hidden from the world. His fingers ran over the markings on the ship's hull, and a shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't just any old ruin. It was something far more significant. He had heard rumors of ancient ships from a time before the galaxy's known civilizations. Some said the human race once controlled powerful weapons that could alter the balance of the universe. But those were just stories, myths, legends. To Elias, however, this discovery felt real. The ship, which seemed to stretch endlessly into the dense jungle, had a strange energy to it. Elias had spent his life studying history, and this was something he had only dreamed of. The ship's design was unlike any alien structure he had ever seen. It was built for war, yes, but it was also built to last. Its sleek metallic surfaces were polished and smooth, unlike the jagged edges of most alien ruins. Its hull seemed indestructible, like it had been forged in a time when war had no boundaries. Elias felt a deep connection to the ship, something pulling him toward it. He needed to understand it. He needed to know its secrets. His heart raced with excitement as he made his way around the ship, searching for an entrance. The jungle had long since claimed most of the surrounding area, but Elias was determined to find a way inside. After what felt like an eternity, he spotted a narrow gap between two large pieces of metal. He crawled through the opening, his breath quickening as he entered the dark interior of the ship. The air was thick with the scent of dust and old machinery. The faint glow of long-dead lights flickered above him, casting strange shadows on the walls. Elias pulled out his small flashlight and shone it across the room. The space was massive. The walls were covered with strange symbols and diagrams, but Elias didn't understand them. They were old, much older than any alien language he had studied. It was as if the ship had been built by a people who were lost to time. His flashlight landed on a large control panel, untouched for centuries. Elias approached it cautiously, his heart racing. The controls looked primitive compared to the advanced technology the aliens used, but there was something familiar about it, something he could almost understand. He placed his hand on the panel, and for a moment, nothing happened. Elias frowned. Maybe it was too old. Maybe it was beyond repair. But then, with a soft hum, the panel flickered to life. Lights flashed on, and a low voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, Commander." Elias stumbled back, his mind spinning. The voice was mechanical, but there was something personal about it, as if the ship had been waiting for him. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't just any ship. This was Invictus. The name appeared on the screen in front of him, written in an ancient language Elias couldn't understand. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing over the panel once more. The voice continued, this time clearer. "Reactivating systems. Please input command code." Elias stared at the screen. He had no idea what the code was. He wasn't the commander. He was just a human archaeologist who had stumbled upon this ancient ship. Yet, somehow, the ship seemed to recognize him. The markings on the control panel glowed, as if waiting for him to take the next step. His mind raced. What was this ship? How had it ended up here? Why had it been left to rot in the jungle for so long? But most importantly, why was it calling him a commander? Suddenly, the air around him felt thick with energy. The ship's systems began to hum, and the ground under his feet trembled slightly. Elias could sense the ship was coming to life, but he wasn't sure how to control it. The ship seemed to be alive, as if it had its own will, its own purpose. Just then, Elias heard a noise behind him. His head snapped around, and he froze. There, standing at the entrance to the ship, were the alien researchers, their eyes wide with disbelief. "How did you?" The Lumai scholar started, but her voice trailed off. Elias didn't say a word. He knew what they were thinking. They had laughed at him. They had dismissed him as a human fool, someone too inexperienced to make any real discoveries. But now, standing before them, Elias had proven them wrong. The ship was real, and it was waiting for him. The aliens took cautious steps toward him, their eyes fixed on the ship. Their usual arrogance was gone, replaced by awe. They had expected nothing more than a few crumbling ruins. Not this, an ancient warship with a mind of its own. They had no idea what to make of it. Elias didn't care. He had found what no one else could see, what they had overlooked. And now, it was his to uncover. Elias stood frozen, his hand still resting on the control panel as the alien researchers slowly moved forward, their expressions a mix of wonder and confusion. They had seen his discovery, but nothing had prepared them for the ship's sudden response. The hum of the ancient warship was growing louder, and the entire interior seemed to vibrate with energy. The Lumai scholar, with her transparent wings shimmering in the dim light, was the first to speak. This cannot be real. Her voice trembled, and for the first time since Elias had met her, there was no sarcasm or superiority in her tone. Elias glanced at her, then back at the flickering control panel. The ship's systems were coming to life. He could feel it. Every wire, every circuit seemed to pulse with energy, as though the ship had been waiting for something, or someone, and now that someone was him. The Vryxian scholar, a tall, slender figure with gleaming silver skin, stepped closer to the ship's entrance. His eyes scanned the controls with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. This technology, it's not from any known civilization. This is older than anything we've ever encountered. His voice was full of awe. Elias nodded, feeling a surge of pride. I think this ship's been waiting here, hidden in the jungle, for a long time. And I think it's waiting for me to unlock its secrets. The Lumai floated closer, her wings brushing against the air. But why you, Elias? You are just a human. You have no knowledge of ancient alien technology. I don't know, Elias admitted, but I can feel it. This ship, it's different. It wants something from me. The voice on the control panel spoke again, its tone calm but firm. Command code, Alpha 7 to 9 Delta. Input required. Elias's heart skipped a beat. Alpha 7 to 9 Delta. Could that be the code? He wondered aloud. He turned toward the researchers. Do any of you know this code? They all shook their heads, still struggling to understand the ship's technology. It's possible that the code has been lost over time, the Vryxian said. But how would a human? Before he could finish his sentence, the ship's voice spoke again, this time louder and more insistent. Command code, Alpha 7 to 9 Delta. Input required. Elias took a deep breath. He didn't know how he knew, but something in his gut told him this was the moment. This was the key. Without any further hesitation, he spoke the code aloud. Alpha 7 to 9 Delta. The room fell silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Elias's heart was pounding in his chest. Had he been wrong? Was this all just a fluke? Then, with a sudden flash of light, the control panel flickered and hummed to life. The walls of the ship seemed to shift, and a large door at the far end of the chamber slowly began to open. The sound of ancient machinery groaning echoed through the ship, filling the air with a deep, resonating hum. The researchers stared in disbelief as the massive door opened to reveal a vast chamber beyond. It was like nothing they had ever seen. The chamber was filled with rows upon rows of what appeared to be advanced weapons and systems. But these weapons were unlike any they had ever encountered. They were sleek, deadly, and beautifully crafted. Elias stepped forward, his pulse quickening. The chamber was alive with energy, and for the first time, he felt like he was truly connected to something bigger than himself. This ship, this ancient warship, was more than just a machine. It was a living testament to a civilization long gone. I don't understand, the Lumai whispered. This ship, It's more advanced than anything we've ever seen. How could it be so old? I don't know, Elias said, his voice quiet with awe. But I think we're about to find out. As they entered the chamber, the ship's voice came again, its tone now more like a command. Welcome, Commander Elias. The Invictus awaits your orders. Elias turned toward the researchers, who were staring at him in shock. I don't know what's happening, he said, his voice uncertain. But I think the ship recognizes me. It's like it's been waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The Vrixian scholar stepped forward, his expression now more serious than ever. This ship, this technology could change everything. It could change the balance of power in the galaxy. We must study it, learn from it, and understand its purpose. Elias nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew this ship held the key to something monumental, but there was still so much they didn't know. The questions were endless, and the answers were just beginning to unfold. But one thing was certain: this discovery would change everything. The atmosphere in the ship's chamber was heavy with tension. Elias could feel it in his bones, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The Invictus was no longer just an ancient relic. It was alive, waiting for something. And that something, it seemed, was him. The researchers moved cautiously around the chamber, examining the strange weapons and technology that lined the walls. The room hummed with a soft, eerie energy, the air vibrating with the pulse of the ship. Elias glanced at the control panel, which had shut off after he had entered the command code. The Invictus seemed to be resting, waiting for the next step. I think we've only just begun to scratch the surface, Elias muttered, mostly to himself. The Lumai scholar, still hovering close by, turned toward him. You're right. But the question is, what exactly is this ship capable of? What is its purpose? Elias didn't have an answer. He wasn't sure if anyone did. But he could sense something important, something powerful, inside the Invictus. It was a feeling he couldn't explain, a pull that urged him to keep going. The ship wanted him to learn more, to discover what lay deep within its heart. Maybe it's not just a warship, Elias said, more to himself than to anyone else. Maybe it's a key to something else. The Vrixian scholar approached Elias, his eyes wide with fascination. A key? You mean this ship could lead us to more than just weapons? A civilization? Elias nodded. Yes, it could be more than we ever imagined. But we need to go deeper. There's something in this ship that's calling me, and I can't ignore it. With a determined step, Elias made his way toward a staircase that led down into the lower levels of the ship. The others followed, though they remained cautious, unsure of what they might find. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to thrum with energy, as though the Invictus itself was aware of their presence and guiding them forward. As they descended into the depths of the ship, the walls around them began to change. The technology became more advanced, the lights brighter, casting an eerie glow on the long corridor ahead. It was clear that this section of the ship was unlike any they had seen before. The machinery hummed with a power that felt almost alive. Elias's mind raced with possibilities. What was this ship? How had it ended up here, buried deep within a jungle on a distant world? He had no answers, but he was determined to find them. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the ship. At its center stood a massive structure, its shape resembling a towering engine or core. The air around it buzzed with raw energy, and Elias could feel the power radiating from it. This is it, Elias whispered, his voice filled with awe. The others stepped forward, their eyes wide as they took in the sight. The Vrixian scholar was the first to speak. This must be the core of the ship. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. It could be a source of unlimited energy. Or, Elias didn't wait for him to finish. He approached the core, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the ship's presence, its intelligence, guiding him toward this moment. The core was more than just a machine. It was a living, breathing entity. And Elias was beginning to understand it. He reached out, his hand hovering just above the core. The ship's voice spoke again, calm and clear. "Welcome, Commander. The Invictus has been waiting." Elias's pulse quickened. The ship was speaking to him directly now. He wasn't just a researcher or an archaeologist. He was the commander of this ancient warship. The realization hit him like a wave, and for a moment, he stood there in stunned silence, unsure of what to do next. The Lumei stepped forward, her wings fluttering nervously. "Commander, is it truly speaking to you?" Elias nodded slowly, still processing the enormity of what had just happened. "It is, and I think it's ready. Ready for me to take control." The Vryxian stepped forward, clearly skeptical. "You, a human, commanding this ship. You've barely even begun to understand its technology. We need to proceed with caution." But Elias wasn't listening. His fingers hovered over the controls on the core, and as if on cue, the ship responded. Lights flashed, and the hum of the machinery grew louder. The air seemed to crackle with power, and the entire ship vibrated as though it was coming to life. "This is it," Elias said, a sense of purpose settling over him. "The ship is ready, and so am I." He pressed a series of buttons on the control panel, his fingers moving with surprising confidence. The core responded, and the ship began to stir, its systems coming online one by one. The energy in the room increased, and Elias felt the weight of the ship's potential settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just an archaeologist. He was the commander of the Invictus, and with that power came responsibility. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a key to unlocking something far greater. The researchers looked on in awe and disbelief, their skepticism replaced by wonder. The Invictus was no longer a mystery, it was an ally. And it was waiting for Elias to lead it into a new age. The Invictus hummed with energy, its systems now fully awake. Elias could feel the power surging through the ship, as if it were breathing, alive with potential. The researchers, still processing everything that had just happened, were now standing in awe, their eyes wide as they looked around. The room, once dark and forgotten, now pulsed with light and life. Elias stood in front of the ship's core, his heart racing with excitement and fear. He had done it. He had unlocked the ship's true potential. But with that power came responsibility. He wasn't just a human in an ancient ship anymore. He was the commander, and it was time to make his first decision. The ship's voice came again, calm and clear. "Commander Elias, the Invictus is yours to command. What are your orders?" Elias swallowed hard. He had never imagined he would be in a position like this. He was no military leader, no expert in warfare. He was just a scientist, an explorer. But now, with the Invictus at his command, everything had changed. The ship wasn't just an artifact, it was a weapon, and it was his to control. "What should we do?" he asked aloud, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. The Lumei scholar, who had been observing him quietly, stepped forward. "We must proceed carefully, Commander. This ship holds power beyond anything we've ever seen. It could change the course of history, for better or for worse. We need to understand its purpose before we make any decisions." Elias nodded, taking in her words. He knew she was right. The Invictus was powerful, but that power could be dangerous. He needed to know what the ship was truly capable of before making any rash moves. "I agree," Elias said, turning toward the control panel. "We need to learn more about what's inside this ship. We can't just rush into things." The Vryxian scholar, who had been silent up until now, spoke up. "But what if we don't have time? The technology in this ship could be the key to defeating the greatest threats in the galaxy. The enemies we've been fighting for years. This ship could give us the upper hand." Elias glanced at the Vryxian, feeling the weight of his words, but his gut told him to be cautious. This wasn't just any ship. It was a vessel of ancient power, a relic of a civilization long gone. The secrets inside it could be far more dangerous than any weapon. "I'm not rushing into anything," Elias said firmly. I need to understand the ship. I need to know what it was built for and why it's here. The Invictus responded, its voice calm and steady. Commander Elias, the purpose of the Invictus is to protect. It was created to defend the galaxy from those who would threaten peace and order. It has been dormant for millennia, but it is ready to serve again. The words echoed in the room, and for a moment, no one moved. The researchers exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of awe and concern. The ship had a mission, one it had been built for long before they had even discovered it. It wasn't just a tool for destruction. It was a guardian, a protector, and Elias was its commander. "We have to be careful," the Lumai scholar said quietly, as if speaking more to herself than anyone else. "This power, it could be used for good or evil. Who's to say what will happen if it falls into the wrong hands?" Elias turned to face her, his mind made up. "I know what we have to do. We need to take control of the Invictus, learn everything we can about it, and then decide what to do with its power. We can't let anyone else get their hands on it." As he spoke, Elias felt the ship respond, the hum of energy growing stronger around him. The Invictus was listening, waiting for his orders. "Commander Elias," the ship's voice said again, "the Invictus is ready for your next command. What is your will?" Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the ship's power settling over him. It was a heavy responsibility, but he knew it was his to bear. The ship was his now, and with it came the possibility of changing the galaxy. But first, he needed to understand it. "Activate the ship's scanning systems," Elias ordered. "We need to gather as much information as possible. Let's see what the Invictus can really do." The control panel blinked as the ship's systems activated. The walls of the chamber lit up with a soft blue glow, and a series of holographic screens appeared in the air. Data streamed across the panels, displaying maps, schematics, and systems that Elias could barely understand. But he could see the outline of the ship's defenses, its weapons, and the vast network of systems that powered it. "This is incredible," Elias whispered, his eyes scanning the information. "This ship is more than just a war machine. It's a fortress. It has defenses beyond anything I could have imagined." The Vrixian stepped forward, his expression serious. "What are you planning to do with this power, Commander? Do you intend to use the Invictus as a weapon?" Elias turned to him, his expression determined. "I'm not sure yet. But one thing is clear. We need to be prepared. There are dangers out there. Enemies who won't hesitate to use their power for destruction. The Invictus might be our best hope for stopping them." The ship's voice echoed once more, its tone calm but firm. "The Invictus will follow your lead, Commander. What are your orders?" Elias took a deep breath. This was it, his first true command, and the weight of the galaxy was now on his shoulders. Elias stood in the heart of the Invictus, his eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing a vast network of data. The ship's systems had finally unlocked, revealing incredible information. But with that knowledge came a stark realization. The galaxy wasn't as peaceful as they had hoped. The ship had a hidden database, one that seemed to have been buried deep within its systems. It contained intelligence about an alien force that had been growing in strength, operating in the shadows for decades. The Invictus had been built to fight this threat, but Elias had no idea it still existed. The hidden enemy was out there, and now they knew. He turned to the Lumai scholar, who had been poring over the data with him. "What are we dealing with here?" Elias asked, his voice tense. "Who are these enemies, and what do they want?" The scholar's eyes narrowed as she examined the information. This is troubling. These are the Vreth, the same species we've been fighting for years, but they've evolved, adapted. They've developed new technologies, and they're more dangerous than ever before. The Vreth were known for their ruthless tactics and advanced weaponry. They had been a constant threat to many civilizations, but their power had been kept in check, until now. The Invictus had been created as a defense against them, but the ship had been dormant for so long that no one knew how much of a threat the Vreth still posed. "We need to act fast," Elias said, a cold weight settling in his chest. If they've been quietly growing in power all this time, we're running out of time. The Vryxian scholar, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. His face was filled with worry. This is a crisis, Commander. If the Vreth discover we have the Invictus, they will stop at nothing to take it from us. We need to prepare for war. Elias nodded grimly. He had never planned for this. He had thought they had time to study the ship, to learn about its systems and history. But now the threat was real, and there was no more time to waste. The Invictus had been built for war, and it was time to use it for its true purpose. We can't wait for them to come to us, Elias said. We need to find out where they are and strike first. If we're going to stop them, we need to hit them before they can strike. The ship's voice echoed through the control room. Commander Elias, the Invictus has the ability to scan for Vreth activity across the galaxy. It can track their movements and locate their strongholds. Do you wish to initiate a scan? Elias didn't hesitate. Yes. Initiate the scan now. The Invictus's systems hummed to life, the massive ship beginning to scan the galaxy for any signs of the Vreth. Holographic maps spread across the room, showing regions of space where the enemy was most active. Elias felt a sense of urgency rise within him. This wasn't just about the ship anymore. It was about the survival of their entire world, their people and their allies. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. Finally, the scan results came in. Elias studied the data intently. They're out there, and they're closer than we thought, he said, pointing to a cluster of coordinates on the map. The Vreth had established a stronghold in a remote system, far from the major galactic powers, hidden in plain sight. The Invictus's display zoomed in on the system. It was a cold, desolate place. No habitable planets, just asteroids and floating debris. But hidden in the chaos, the Vreth had built their base, and it was massive. We need to move out now, Elias ordered. We can't give them a chance to reinforce their position. We have the element of surprise. The Lumei scholar looked at him with a mixture of fear and awe. Are you sure about this? We don't know everything the Invictus is capable of. We could be walking into a trap. Elias locked eyes with her. He understood her concerns, but there was no time to waste. We're not walking into a trap. We're taking the fight to them. He turned to the Vryxian. Prepare the ship. We're going to launch a full assault. The crew moved quickly, activating the Invictus's weapons and shields, preparing for their first real mission. The ship hummed with energy, ready to carry them into battle. Elias stood at the command console, his heart pounding. He had never been in a real fight before, but he wasn't just a scientist anymore. He was the commander of the Invictus, and his mission was clear. Commander, the Invictus's voice spoke again. We are ready for departure. The Vreth stronghold is within reach. Elias nodded, feeling a surge of determination. Let's go. We don't have much time. The Invictus's massive engines roared to life, and the ship began to move toward the Vreth stronghold. Elias could feel the power beneath his feet, the force of the ship's engines propelling them into the vastness of space. They were heading into the unknown, to face an enemy that had been hiding in the shadows for far too long. And as the Invictus soared through the stars, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of the galaxy rested in his hands. The Invictus surged through the dark void of space, its engines roaring with power as it neared the Vreth stronghold. Elias stood at the command console, his grip tight on the controls. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. This was it, the moment that could change the fate of their entire galaxy. The crew moved with precision, working together seamlessly as they prepared for the final confrontation. The Vreth stronghold loomed ahead, a fortress of metal and shadow, hidden in the debris field of a desolate asteroid belt. Elias knew the enemy would be waiting for them, but they had no choice. The Vreth had to be stopped. Commander, the Vreth have detected our approach. The Invictus's voice echoed in the control room. They are activating defensive shields and preparing their weapons. Elias nodded, his resolve strengthening. It's time to see if this ship lives up to its reputation. We need to break through their defenses. The holographic displays in the control room flickered, showing the Vreth fleet forming a defensive perimeter around their stronghold. It was a formidable force, battleships and war cruisers, all bristling with advanced weaponry. But Elias wasn't worried. The Invictus was more than just a warship. It was a symbol of their hope, their resilience, and their determination. Prepare the weapons and brace for impact. Elias ordered. The ship's weapons systems powered up, and the Invictus's shields hummed with energy. The first volley of enemy fire came in fast, but the Invictus's shields held firm, absorbing the blasts. The ship rocked slightly with each hit, but Elias didn't flinch. He wasn't going to let this be the end. Not after everything they had been through. Return fire, Elias commanded. The Invictus unleashed its weapons, powerful energy beams cutting through the void, striking the Vreth ships with precision. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet as their shields began to fail under the barrage. The Vreth were not expecting such resistance. Their ships began to fall back, but Elias knew this was just the beginning. Deploy the fighters, he ordered. We need to take out their command ship. The Invictus released its smaller attack craft, sleek fighters that zipped into the fray, weaving between larger ships with incredible agility. The battle was chaotic, a violent dance in the stars, but Elias kept his focus on the enemy command ship at the heart of the Vreth fleet. It was their only chance to break their hold on the system. As the Invictus moved closer, Elias could feel the weight of the decision. They had to make it through this, or everything they had fought for would be lost. The enemy's fire grew more intense, but the Invictus was resilient. The ship's advanced armor absorbed the worst of the damage, its systems rapidly repairing any minor breaches. Target the command ship, Elias said. All weapons, focus fire on the enemy flagship. The Invictus's massive cannons charged up, their energy building to a critical level. Elias gave the signal, and the ship unleashed a torrent of energy that slammed into the Vreth flagship. The explosion was massive, a flash of light that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The flagship's shields crumpled under the force, and the ship itself began to break apart, its once proud hull torn to pieces. Direct hit on the flagship, the Invictus's voice confirmed. The Vreth command ship is disabled. But there was no time to celebrate. Elias knew the Vreth would not surrender easily. Their forces were scattering, retreating into the shadows of the asteroid belt. It was only a matter of time before they regrouped and tried again. They needed to finish this now. Chase them down, Elias ordered, his voice steady. We can't let them escape. We need to end this here and now. The Invictus moved swiftly, its weapons blazing as it pursued the fleeing Vreth ships. It wasn't long before the last of the enemy fleet was wiped out, their vessels reduced to debris drifting through space. The battle was over, but Elias didn't feel relief, only the heavy weight of what had been accomplished. We've done it, the Lumai scholar said, her voice filled with awe. The Vreth are defeated. Elias stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the enormity of the victory. They had won, yes, but the cost had been high. The crew had given everything, and now they were faced with the challenge of rebuilding their defenses, their alliances, and their hopes for the future. Not yet, Elias replied, his voice soft but firm. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We've stopped the Vreth, but there's still so much we don't know about the galaxy. We have to stay vigilant. He turned to the crew, his expression resolute. The Invictus is more than just a ship. It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand together, no matter the odds. The crew nodded in agreement. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But Elias knew the road ahead would be long, and the galaxy was still full of unknown dangers. They couldn't rest, not yet. They had a duty to the future. As the Invictus turned back toward their home system, Elias looked out into the stars. The battle was won, but the journey was far from over. With the strength of the Invictus behind them, they were ready for whatever the future held.